Hello, everyone, and welcome to episode 25 of the podcast that is within our Hub community. So you may have seen the content over this month within the Hub to our members, all being about brand messaging, consistency, and attracting your ideal target audience. So we've covered such topics as the customer map, we've covered topics such as niching, customer profiling, pricing, you name it. All of these things need to be considered when we're looking at attracting our ideal customer or buyer. So we have invited the lovely Keith with us today. So if you're watching this on YouTube or Zoom or playback, you'll be able to see Keith in all his glory with us today. And we're just going to be talking about it in a little bit different because we've known Keith through a networking platform called 4N for quite some time, and we've been a part of each other's LinkedIn network for longer than that, as we're both within the kind of marketing field, and we have been for quite some time, but just in different capacities. Now, as you know, my background is events, so I'm always champion about what events can facilitate within your marketing strategy, amongst many other things. And Keith is very much about print and other forms of digital marketing, but what print can facilitate and do for your business. So I wanted to invite Keith along today to talk about that in a little bit more detail, as I don't know about you guys, but digital fatigue can set in when we are marketing ourselves online. So as much as it's important to be consistent and attract your ideal customer or buyer through online marketing and through events, I think it's equally as important to hear what Keith has to say about print. So Keith, do you just want to explain who you are and what you do to our listeners?
Yeah, thanks for inviting me on, Zoe. My name's Keith. Keith Barker. My business is called Keefomatic Marketing and Design. I've been in business for 8 years, and I am a graphic designer. I've been a graphic designer for 34 years. I know I don't look old enough, but there you go. Graphic designer, also a web designer for almost as long, and marketing consultant for quite a long time too. And my business targets small businesses, and I help small businesses with their print, their websites, and their marketing. So that's what I do. In terms of print, I started my career as graphic designer back in 1989. That's how old I am. And what I've noticed over the years is that print is kind of going out of fashion. And you get a lot of people now setting up businesses for whom they've only ever known digital channels. You know, Facebook's been around for as long as they've been around and things like that. So they're extremely used to working in digital channels, but not so much print. Print is a bit of a mystery to a lot of people. It's seen to be either expensive or complicated or both, and it isn't. It's actually very effective. And certainly if you're talking about things like brand messaging and brand consistency, getting your marketing aligned, print marketing and digital marketing aligned at the same time, helps considerably with your brand consistency and your messaging. And it also helps you to target audiences that you wouldn't normally be able to target, because there are plenty of people who don't use social media, and plenty of people who are pulling themselves away from social media. I would include myself as one of those. So that's what I do. I suppose I'm a print evangelist, if you like, although I don't really like that term, but that's what I do.
Agree, and I think the reason I wanted you to come on, Keith, and just explain that a little bit is because we've talked about customer profiling a lot, because it is an activity that everybody can do for free, but not a lot of people know how really to do it well. We spoke to Vanessa on episode 24 of the Hub podcast about the importance of asking the right question in market research, and that ties in with customer profiling, because that is what customer profiling is. It's a form of market research. But Keith made a good point, and that's hence why I've asked him to come along today, is because some customers, some targets, some sectors aren't online. And you might think, what do you mean they're not online? By 2025, 98% of people are going to be buying online first. That's correct, but that's consumer stats. That's about people wanting to buy shopping online, such as groceries, such as maybe, health and beauty appointments, business appointments. Yes, stats are telling us that more people are buying online. That's not a lie, that is a fact. However, a lot of sectors don't like to be online. One, they might not be allowed to because of professional capacity. Secondly, digital fatigue, rightly so. Keith's just said, I've touched upon it very briefly, but digital fatigue for me is also setting in as well. As much as, you know, digital drives traffic to our website, as our web developer shared with us even this morning, it's still, for me, very draining. And I think you've really got to be thinking about how your customer wishes to receive that message and be spoken to, because we can't forget the human element. I always talk about social media, but it's social before media. You know, we forget that because of how constant it is. So print is a very welcome change, I think, at the moment. However, it's been around for decades. I mean, you mentioned it, Keith, that you started working in it, but do you want to know something? I was 2 years old when you started working in the sector, but this sector has been around for decades, guys. So it's not to be forgotten, and we've got to be thinking about versatility and speaking to people in different ways and how they wish to be spoken to ensure we're widening the net, meaning so we're generating and be more targeted and generating more leads for our business. So I'll ask yourself the question, Keith, why do you think print is so important, and why is it important to be consistent with that message offline as well as online?
Well, print it enables you to get places that you can't get to with digital, which we just talked about. But it's tangible. You know, you can feel it and hold it, and you can take it away with you. Mm-hmm. I do a lot of networking, and one of the things in our network is that there is a table there for you to put all your marketing materials, and people can grab it and take it away. In a standard networking meeting, you get 10 minutes to talk to one person, mm-hmm. if you're lucky, and you're not going to get across everything that you do in 10 minutes. And even if you arrange another meeting afterwards, mm-hmm. It's still going to be, you know, a long conversation. But if you can give somebody a brochure or a flyer and say, look, this is what I do, it's got all the information, have a look at my website. I'm not saying it's print only, because it isn't. You know, you use your print to supplement your digital and vice versa.
Yeah.
So there's the tangible element of print. There's also the simple fact that nobody else is doing it at the moment, it seems. When I go back to 30 years ago when I started, I'd go downstairs, and on the front doormat there'd be an enormous pile of stuff every day from the postman, and it would be, you'd split the two piles, the letters you actually want to open and all the other stuff. And the other stuff would be bigger. It'd be a big old pile like this, you know. Junk mail was called junk mail because it was so much of it. And mm-hmm. ask you now, how many bits of direct mail do you get now in a week?
Yeah, very little.
Yeah, because it's all moved digitally. So now if you go on Facebook and Instagram, your feed is chock full of adverts for people that you've never heard of, things that you don't want, you're not interested in. All that marketing has moved online, which has left a big space for people to do direct mail. I mean, it is effective because nobody does it. Yeah. You want to stand out, to send some mail, not just send some flat mail, send some lumpy mail. Lumpy mail is brilliant.
I agree, because well, Keith will know, and maybe some of our listeners, but when I was building my business 8 years ago, initially when myself and Keith first probably linked up online through LinkedIn, I remember I was working as a business centre manager whilst I was building my business up on a part-time basis, and I used to remember the amount of post I'd received from my customers. That majority was junk, as Keith's mentioned. Now I think I've received one letter in a month, and we're on the 27th of November. So in 27 days, I've received one letter, because everything is within, you know, digital form now. But 100%, it's about standing out and doing different from the norm, because you've mentioned lumpy mail. We've championed lumpy mail ourselves. Dana Whiteland has spoken about it on a bit of a extensive basis in her business, and she's niched into lumpy mail with merchandise. You know, it's about sending something and also making an impact and making them feel special. I believe. But that kind of ties me into kind of a top tip I was given very early on in my journey when it came to print and marketing. And I'd love to hear your thoughts on it, Keith. And if you can share any top tips about it with us, sharing that importance of why to do it. And it was about consistency. Somebody said to me, if you are going to do something offline within your brand messaging and your marketing to create that consistency, you have to send it at least 3 times for it to be read. Would you agree, with you being obviously a specialist in this area with graphic and design and marketing? Would you agree that? And if not, what would be your best tip for our listeners?
To be honest with you, I don't think anybody knows the answer to that question. How many times your message needs to reach somebody? Because I mean, I've heard it called the 7 touches of marketing, and then I've heard somebody else call it the 11 touches of marketing, and then somebody else calls it the 16 touches of marketing. So it's what is true is that you do need to be consistent with your messaging, and you need to tell people things more than once. Because even if you've got the perfect message and you tell somebody that they've given the perfect ad or the perfect social media post, it might not be the perfect time for people to read, or they might just miss it completely. So you have to be relentlessly repetitive almost about pushing your message across. It doesn't mean saying the same thing over and over again, but it just means being consistent and being consistent and persistent about your messaging. And the upshot of adding print to all of this is it gives you an extra channel. So you're not just constantly putting out the same social media post. You can then come from sideways and say, okay, I'll send you a letter, or I'll send you a voucher, or I'll send you a loyalty card, So yeah, I mean, I don't think it answers your question at all, but
but it does, because in marketing, as you know, Keith, a lot can be said, and it's not said from an ill place. It's said probably based on recommendation, and I've heard of the 3 rule in terms of an advert, or in terms of, print, if you're doing something on a printed ad campaign within your marketing, going through, obviously, maybe postcode and demographic and distribution and that angle, rather than lumpy mail, maybe because lumpy mail's more targeted. But I just wanted to hear your thoughts, because I know stats change. Myself and Anne Wilson who's from Why Change, if anyone who doesn't know Anne on the call, if they want to go and check Anne out, she is head of growth for Why Change. And we were talking about marketing and how sometimes it can be quite dated because it's just on repeat. And actually now marketing is changing, sometimes daily, never mind fortnightly or 30 days or 90-day cycles. So I just wanted to see whether that was the same, and that stat was still the same that I heard many years ago about making sure you're doing it through repetition and at least 3 times when it comes to print, to ensure we're targeting people at the right time for them and their business.
Yeah, well, I don't have a particular stat that I've used, but all I can tell you is that a lot of small businesses assume that if they're going to do advertising, they do it once. And they will then say, did it work or didn't it work? And if it did work, great. If it didn't work, they never do advertising ever again, because advertising doesn't work. And that is not how it works at all. You have to be persistent, and you have to keep trying things. The whole point of any kind of advertising, whether it's online or offline, is that you devise your campaign, you send it out, you get your responses, and then you look at it and say, okay, how did that work? How can we improve it? And there's this thing called A/B split testing, which I won't bore everybody with. But basically, online, it's a lot easier than it is in print. But it can be done in print, where you send out 2 versions of the same campaign with 1 change, and you work out which one was more successful. And then you take the one that was more successful, then make another change. And it's a rolling process, which can go on for years. But most small businesses don't get that. They just think, I did advertising and it didn't work. Or I tried pay-per-click advertising, it didn't work. And they give up. It's not the way to do it.
100%. We was in a local networking meeting not so long ago, based in this business centre that we're situated within, and that was the very similar conversation. An architect was mentioning about frequency, and that they did it once and they wouldn't do again, but they didn't need to, in essence, when they look back at it, because they got so many leads through referrals and word of mouth. And I said, well, that's all well and good, but are you like missing opportunity by having that mindset? And it opened up a discussion about networking and about preparation and about pitch and about consistency, which kind of just confirmed to me about this topic of conversation this month, that it's something that needs to be revisited all the time, as many BDM topics do, which the hub is about business development and looking at the different topics that can help your business excel. But marketing is the one that has to be consistent. We were sharing it with Keith before the podcast about being consistent. You can be good, you can be bad, but you've got to be consistent, because if you're not consistent, you're not staying at the forefront of someone's mind. And that can be through different forms. But I do agree with Keith, print is being forgotten. Just in summary, this month alone, one piece of post, guys, and if someone was really wanting to grab my attention, I go to that post box every single day just in case something's been sent. So how special can you make someone feel? Because remember, buying decisions are based on a motive, with the heart first, then justification with the brain second. So just imagine the impact that you can make by sending something a little bit different. And that's really the essence of why I wanted to bring Keith on and talk about his opinion on this topic today. So
one interesting thing on that, just
yeah.
to butt in, sorry.
It's not a problem.
One of my clients is a sweet shop, and she used to have an actual premises on the high street, and then she sold that to somebody else, and she then went away and did something else for a year, and then came back because she really missed the idea of what she used to do and really loved it. So she set up she got a home office in her garden, and she now sells all her sweets on Etsy. But what she really understands, which I wish more people did, is the importance of packaging. And when she sends people the sweets, she makes a beautiful job of packaging them in a lovely box with ribbon and a bit of tissue, and she's got branded stickers which she puts on, and that she makes the whole process of receiving the post an experience. And she gets so much positive feedback on Etsy, not just about the sweets, but about the actual package itself.
Yeah.
And that's the whole thing there, is that the print element of it is adding value to her business, and it's making people come back because she turned it into something more than just a box of sweets, which is kind of really what it is.
Yeah, it is. It's about making your customers feel cared for. And that reminds me of something, and that probably is actually because of how I felt in that relationship to why I did what I did. But basically, on the same thread of what Keith just shared there for our listeners, I remember meeting a brand in Manchester who sold positivity through clothing, through merchandise. And I absolutely fell in love with the brand because I'm a big advocate on kindness, anti-bullying in my spare time. So I've been a school governor, etc. It's a real core value to me because of my own personal experience within my family. So that aside, I just loved how they presented it and how they boxed everything up. So I made some orders and they arrived, and each order was individually packed with a ribbon, with a nice gift box, with a lovely message from the owner, and a little bit about the story of why she does what she does. I then purchased from her on her last sale, not the Black Friday sale, the last sale. So I think it was January, maybe. Again, more stuff, some clothing that had positivity on. So again, I'm a brand advocate for this brand, this business now, and I know the standard that I'm going to receive. One of the items was faulty. No fault of theirs, no fault of mine. It was just due to the temperature of the glass bottle, which meant that when I put the glass bottle into hot water, the vinyl came off. And it's a fault with the bottle, not with what they did. They asked me if I would like a refund or a new product. And I said, I don't want either. And she didn't understand. I said, I don't want either. I just wanted to make you aware that there might be a fault manufacturing wise, but I don't want the money back. I don't want a bottle. I'm just an advocate of your brand. I was just letting you know, because at the end of the day, guys, I can still use the bottle. The bottle didn't break, just a letter fell off. I'm not going to have that small business take money out of their bottom line with a product I can still use again. But because I felt and the experience with the brand and everything that they advocate, it really didn't matter. They already created that impact and that positive impression of me that I will continue to buy from them and continue to support them in different ways as well. And that is just the impact that they gave through presentation, through the values, and through the delivery of the product of when it came through my front door. So that just gives you an example of how it can influence and how it can, enhance, your customer relationship as well. So on that topic, Keith, is there anything that our audience and our members within the hub can consider when it comes to print and keeping that consistency and message? Do you have anything that you can share that you have seen work in the past? You gave the example of the sweet shop lady, but anything else that comes to mind to give them some variety?
Stuff that works. Well, it all works really, but let me think.
That's
now.
always good.
Let me have a think. One of the really, really simple things, I'm quite into combining digital and print if possible, and putting QR codes on things is the perfect way to get people to visit your website if you've got a printed leaflet or even a business card. It's not rocket science by any means, and I'm not the first person or the last person that will ever do it. But I found it to be really, really useful. I've got a customer who does Forever Living, and usually they get their business cards through Forever Living because that's how they do it. But she said, I really want a business card where I can actually get people to go to, one, my shop where I can sell my stuff, but two, where I take on my team members. So I said, why don't I design you a business card with 2 QR codes on, one to go to each shop? And she said, yeah, let's do it. So I did it, and she only went off to one of her conferences, and everybody go, why'd you get those business cards? They're amazing. So I've done loads and loads of those for various other Forever Living people. And it's something that's, it's common sense for me, trying to get people to do what you want to do via print, so QR codes are brilliant for that sort of thing. Yeah, that's just one example.
It is, guys, and it can as well with the consistency, the brand message, something as simple as that. And trust me, simplicity is key when it's marketing. So with you mentioning Keith, it's probably simple. I'm glad it's simple because it's something that we talk about a lot. Our listeners will know simplicity is key. And if a 10-year-old can do it and understand it, you will be able to do it and understand it. And most importantly, so will your ideal customer. So as simple as that, QR code on printed leaflets that get posted through the letterbox. That same QR code can be found on your phone for people to scan when you're out networking. That QR code can be on your exhibition stand for people to book an appointment or direct people to a project or your website, what you're trying to promote and get more business of. That level of simplicity can then be multiplied and repeated on all areas of your marketing to ensure that you're capturing as many people to do what you want them to do as possible. Because that's
on car magnets for a company who does online opticians, and they frequently park their car outside Specsavers in their town. And I said, why don't you get yourself a car magnet, like a little advert with your Q card, and say, like, we can do cheaper glasses than these people with a QR code on it. No, it's brilliant.
Yeah, definitely. It is, and it's like we've said, it's about them doing something next with it. That's what you want them to do. You want them to do an actionable step next, whether that's through digital or through print. And that's just the importance of making sure that this variety of marketing within your brand and your design and your messaging is considered and is key. And thinking about how you make them feel most than anything for me, because people buy on emotion with justification after. So what would you like?
One other point I was just going to make on that, sorry. It's,
sure, no problem.
You can never make it simple enough to get people to do stuff. You have to tell them what to do.
Yeah.
And people sometimes forget that. They assume that, I put a QR code on it, I'll know what to do with that.
Yeah.
But you need to say, scan this to visit our website or something along those lines. Because some people are just suspicious about these things, sometimes quite rightly so.
Yeah.
But even on any kind of sales letter, tell them what happens next. And that can be print or digital, Scan it all, fill in the form, and then I will get in touch with you. And you tell them the steps. Make it as absolutely bulletproof, as easy as possible for people to get in touch.
I agree. Don't forget the instruction. We've had that on exhibitions. You know, the QR codes. We downloaded the one that said "Scan Me" ahead of it, and then we had one without. The one that had "Scan Me" had 16 hits and 12 bookings. The one that had nothing had 3.
There you are.
So just to give you a little bit of stats on that, guys, that simplicity is key, and tell people what you want them to do next.
And that's an example of what do you call it? An XY split test as well.
Yeah, definitely. So on that topic of what you want them to do next, Keith, I know obviously you've got 20 plus years of value in this topic and subject. So if anyone is listening to this and thinking, yes, I think I'd like to speak to Keith about print and about obviously getting my message out there, what can they do next to get involved and find out more?
Well, I'm glad you asked. You can go to our website. It's very simple. It's keefomatic.com. It's spelled K-E-E-F. Don't ask me why. It's what I've been called Keith. I'm from London. If you're called Keith in London, you get called Keith. K-E-E-F. So it's keefomatic.com. All the information about what I do is on there. And if you look on social media, not on Facebook particularly, but on LinkedIn especially, at Keefomatic.
Amazing. So go and check Keith out, guys. Go and connect with him. Go and have a look at his website and see how you can get involved and find out more. If you want to book a call, all the details will be on that website for you to do so. Or if you are a member and you're listening to this on our Spotify or a YouTube channel through the community, Keith is within the community. You'll see his profile, so you can also message him directly, which will take you to his Facebook page. However, the best thing to do is to tag me, and I can put that email introduction in place as well. So don't forget the @ to find Keefomatic or at Zoe Wadsworth, and tag me in if you would like an introduction, and I will do that for you, no problem. So thank you, Keith, for joining us. Thank you to our listeners for joining us again for episode 25. Can you believe it? It is December at the end of this month. So we will have one more podcast episode coming to you for 2023, and we will see you next month, guys, if not before, on other channels. Take care and see you soon.